the association we go. It's been about 2 months since the Lakers won the title in the bubble, and last night LeBron and AD went back to work, combining for 21 points in yesterday's preseason win over the Suns. Perk back here with us. Stephen A., starting with you. Will you be worried, though, if the Lakers get off to a slow start?
Not at all. Not even a little bit. Matter of fact, I expect them to. I wouldn't mind if they do. I have no problem whatsoever. When we talk about load management, is much as I have been profoundly against that over the years. It's with the exception is LeBron James. If LeBron James, for any reason, said, you know what, I don't want to start playing until January, as a league, we should stand up and support him. Seriously. I mean, with the work that this man has put in, it doesn't bother me at all. And so I know he's not going to do that. That's why he showed up there last night. He's going to be ready for opening night, at least to some capacity. But I think that if the Lakers do start off, I'm not concerned at all, because not only are they great, they're experienced. So when you look at LeBron James, I think that this is one of the rare breeds that has graduated to the point where he doesn't even need to be questioned about anything that's taking place in the regular season. Everything about him should be measured by postseason play. If this guy decides to take his foot off the gas, if he decides when to amp it up, whatever the case may be, you defer to his judgment. When you've been to 10 NBA Finals, when you've won 4 championships, and when we just finished experienced a global pandemic, the likes of which we hadn't seen for a century, and somehow, some way, when we consider the collapse that we witnessed with the Los Angeles Clippers because of them being devoid of leadership and what have you, although it was nice to see Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Kimmel last night. Bottom line is that LeBron James and the Lakers didn't have that problem. And so I don't think there's anything to be worried about with the Lakers, a slow start or anything like that, because they have the greatness of Anthony Davis, who's one of the top 3 players in the world. And they have the best player in the world, who's the best leader in basketball. And that man is LeBron James. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about.
I don't know what's happening today, but for the second straight segment, I don't know maybe I have a fever or something. I don't know. I'm coming down with something. I agree with Stephen A. I agree, maybe for slightly different reasons, but right on. I'm not worried about the Lakers' slow start at all. Stephen A., let's be honest. The LeBron James teams of the past have often started slow, right? Miami had a slow start at one year. Cleveland had some slow starts, because LeBron's figuring out, how do I get this group to the promised land? And in the meantime, he's 100 years old. He has more miles than anyone on his legs, and he has to pace himself. Now, last year, Anthony Davis came on First Take and told us he challenged LeBron to set the tone on defense. And I think AD was probably right last year, like with a new group of guys and this superstar combination. It's important for your best player to set that tone. And for a lot of the season, LeBron did play better regular season defense than he had in years. But given his age and his mileage, it's, I think, not responsible even to expect him to play defense, for example, all regular season. And sometimes the other guys on the team, even if AD's setting that example, slack off a little bit too when their leader doesn't do it, although Montrezl Harrell plays some defense, some other guys will too. The point is, LeBron knows how to pace himself and knows his body. How do I get to be in the playoffs where when I need to put the pedal to the metal, I still got something in the tank? He's usually done that in the past. This past season, he basically kept the pedal to the metal all year. But I wouldn't even recommend that he does that again. He's signed up for multiple years. He needs to pace himself so he's ready to go when they need him most. And if the Lakers get off to a slow start while LeBron's figuring it all out, no big deal, because when the lights are brightest, he'll show up.
Well, I'm not worried about the Lakers at all. Matter of fact, the only thing I'm worried about is the Lakers coming out and dominating the league. Because when you look at this roster, in my opinion, this is the best roster on paper that LeBron James has had in the last 4 years. And no disrespect to last year's championship team, but when you look at the additions that Rob Pelinka made, I'm looking at this, and LeBron can pace himself. He can take games off and do load management because they have weapons. They have guys that could come in and get the job done and deliver in great fashion. And when I say that, I'm looking at a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who's capable in the regular season, especially is capable of going for 30 plus a night. You got Montrezl Harrell, another guy that's capable of giving you 20 a night if LeBron just decides not to play that night. And then you have Anthony Davis, along with Wes Matthews, along with Marcus Gasol, along with Taylor Horton Tucker, who keeps thriving, and even Kyle Kuzma. Although I disagree with his style of play at times, although I disagree with Kyle Kuzma at times on how he plays the game of basketball, one thing about it, when he gets hot, he gets hot. So with the Lakers roster, job well done by Rob Pelinka, I'm worried about them coming out and dominating too early.
Oh, I'm sorry, Max. You did. No,
right.
I was going to. I'm sorry, Max. I thought you was
No,
going to go.
I mean,
Go.
Listen,
Jump in,
I'm not
Stephen A.
worried.
I'm
not worried. I'm not worried
Stephen
about
A.
this
Max,
early.
Stephen A. and Max, that's how it be. Sometimes y'all get quiet when Big Perk come on here speaking the gospel. Y'all get caught up in what I be saying and loving how I'm delivering this good gospel.
Well,
and sometimes you just got to fall back and listen. Yeah, that's what it is.
First of all, you know better. First of all, you know better. Secondly, respect your elders. Thirdly, and more importantly, that is factually incorrect, Kendrick Perkins. I mean, the fact of the matter is you do drop a lot of science, and I love you to death. But there are some things that you say sometimes I'll be wondering about you, bro. I'll be wondering about you sometimes.
Yeah,
not most, not all, but sometimes, yes.
I feel sorry for your loss. I feel sorry for your loss because you're not being open-minded. When I tell you certain things, I'm just trying to teach you.
I was just under the impression you wanted to debate us on this, that you thought that you would be worried if they got off to a slow start. But since we all agree, next topic.
All right, Perk, leave it, folks, at a loss for words. Don't worry, I got plenty more topics to come your way. Still to come, guys, a Texas guy, the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard. After leading the Raptors to an NBA title, Kawhi joined Paul George in LA, but came up short in the playoffs, losing in the second round after holding a 3-1 series lead on the Nuggets. Kawhi's teammate Lou Williams seemed to take a shot at him during Monday's postgame, saying, "I was in the league preload management." Stephen A., is Kawhi or PG-13 actually the better leader for the Clips?
To answer the question directly, Kawhi or PG, I would say PG. Because by default, not that PG is this vocal leader, this rah-rah guy, but it's because everything that I've heard about Kawhi Leonard, elite, which we all know, both ends of the floor. He is a superstar player, but he is one of the most indifferent leaders you will ever see in your life. He is not a guy that is going to galvanize and inspire. He is a guy that is a master at doing his job, and those other responsibilities come with someone else. And because of that, some people pointed out to how that was a huge problem for the Clippers last year. Now, we can't ignore that PG clearly had a problem with Montrezl Harrell and vice versa. Harrell basically told everybody that. But in the end, when I look at PG, because of all the sacrifices that were made by the Clippers in order to get him, and all the talk that he's been doing about how he's going to get in everybody's you know what, he's got his old trainer back, etc., etc., he's the one guy that could influence Kawhi, for Kawhi to influence others. If anybody could pull it off, it has to be PG because of what Kawhi went through, or what Kawhi insisted upon in order for the Clippers to ultimately get PG. So it's basically by default, but I would say based on Kawhi's personality and what he has shown throughout his entire career, PG is a bit more talkative. He is a bit more loquacious. He does seem more willing to communicate and talk with folks. And I think that lends itself towards leadership in a lot of ways in the NBA. So I would say PG over Kawhi in that regard. But he obviously has to perform on the court in order for people to want to listen to him.
The answer is Kawhi. And the answer is Kawhi for a very simple reason. Because PG-13 goes away in the playoffs. And that dude can't be your leader. He could be an excellent player, And when I say goes away, he's better than an average starter. He's average, somewhere between an average starter and an all-star. But in the regular season, he's somewhere between an all-star and an MVP. He declines in the playoffs. And whatever happened with Kawhi in that last Game 7, or, whatever. Like, some guys have bad nights, and that was a bad time to have a bad night. Kawhi was excellent, as Perk has pointed out. Extraordinary. Through the playoffs for the second consecutive year, because the year before, he won Finals MVP. And that wasn't the first Finals MVP he won. So Kawhi's style is, as you say, Stephen A., that's what the reporting has been. That's what you hear. And I wouldn't dispute it. And it's maybe not ideal. Although, some people lead by example. And if Kawhi is the best at just doing his job, and that's the example he says, maybe everyone should just do their jobs. But the problem with Paul George is he's disqualified because your best player should be your leader. And barring that, a clutch player can be your leader, but not a guy you can't rely on when it matters most. That's why the reporting has also been that the team didn't have a problem with the special treatment Kawhi got. They had a problem with the special treatment Paul George got. That can't be your leader.
Max, you are so wrong right now. You are so wrong in so many areas by saying that your best player has to be your leader, and that is not true. When you look at the Miami Heat, do you know who's the leader for the Miami Heat, Max? Who is the leader for the Miami Heat?
I didn't say your best player has to be your leader. Jimmy Butler.
You just said that. Who? No, he's not. Udonis Haslem is the leader for the Miami Heat. So with that being said, a lot of guys can't gravitate to guys coming up just to show up to work. Your leader does everything else off the court also. And to me, it's a no-brainer to answer the question. Paul George is the better leader. Why? Because he's more vocal. We haven't heard 10 words from Kawhi Leonard this offseason. And when reports come out, they talk about the special treatment that Kawhi gets, being able to take his helicopter to practice, being able to fly back to San Diego to live in his $20 million mansion, holding the plane up, being late, having his own coach on the coaching staff, having his own trainer, everything, just being a loner. So PG, although I don't agree with a lot of things that comes out of his mouth, at least he owns up to a lot of things. He's not afraid to address certain things, especially when it's about himself. It's not all about your leader has to deliver on the court, Max. Your leader is a guy that's going to be vocal. And by the way, the Clippers just invested over $200 million into Paul George. So that means the Clippers are committed to Paul George, and Paul George is committed to the Clippers. Kawhi haven't signed nothing yet. He has a player option for next year. So with that being said, PG is the leader. He has to be the leader, the guy that steps up vocally in the locker room, calling team dinners when they, on the road, getting guys together. That has to be Paul George, because we know that's not Kawhi Leonard, and history tells us that because he wasn't even the leader in Toronto. So that being said, it's Paul George.
I'm not in a position to dispute your locker room experience, who have played on a championship team. When you bring up a guy like Haslem, who's, the Lifetime Heat Award, whatever that is, I get it. He's like synonymous with the franchise. We're talking about different things here, though. Haslem, if you want to call Haslem the leader instead of the heart and soul or a culture setter or whatever, there is leadership in that. But when I think of the Heat, I don't think of Haslem. I don't think the Heat are going to go as far as Haslem leads them. I think of Jimmy Butler. And sure, Kawhi should be more vocal ideally. That's not his style. Maybe you need another dude like a Rondo on that team. That's why we were all talking about that, who would have been the right kind of leader. Well, but Rondo, notice, I didn't say it has to be the best player, but it has to at least be a clutch player. At least be a dude who shows up when you need him. It can't be a dude who goes away under pressure.
Well, Max,
Max, they just giving Udonis Haslem $2.4 million a year. Yeah. They just giving them $2.4 million a year just to sit on the bench and not to be a leader.
I'm not saying he's not important.
Hold on, KP. Here's the deal, Max. Here's what you're missing. You're not highlighting how bad Kawhi is in terms of leadership. See, it'd be one thing if you were just some normal dude, and you just didn't happen, you didn't have that rah-rah personality, but you went out and you played as exceptionally well as he plays for the most part. But when you are the complete antithesis of that, where it's national news that you actually laughed at a press conference, actually laughed. Because you laughed, it was national news. Because they've never seen anything from your personality. Because you're you have a penchant for giving one-liners and being gone. Because even when you're a star, people barely talk to you because you pretty much have nothing to say. You literally could work for the CIA. I mean, they look at you like that. It's a different animal with Kawhi Leonard. And when you are that extreme with your willingness to be a little bit, not extremely quiet, non-communicative, no rah-rah and stuff like that, that's where it's taken to another level because it goes in the opposite direction. When you pay a guy superstar dollars and pay him max dollars, it's not just because of his ability to perform on the court. It's because of the ability he has to galvanize the folks around him. Tim Duncan, with his quiet personality, he was quiet to the media. He wasn't quiet to his teammates. He was a jokester. He played around. He had a great personality. You look at Steph, you look at LeBron, you look at others. There's a difference. That ain't Kawhi. That's a problem.
I'm not disputing that, guys. I'm saying who would be the better leader. In other words, do you have a chance to win a championship if Paul George is the leader of your team? I think the answer is no. But Kawhi's won 2 championships, and both times he was the MVP. And whether or not he was the leader,
he wasn't asked to be a leader
on that Spurs team. They gave him the MVP. On the Toronto team, who was the leader? You want to say Kyle Lowry? At the very least, Kawhi.
Hell yeah!
If you said Kawhi led the Raptors to the championship, that wouldn't be a lie. If Paul George ain't going to lead you to a championship, like if he's the leader, you're running up the white flag. So far in his career, maybe it can change, but it hasn't been the case so far. And it's been largely a result of his play in the playoffs. I take no pleasure in saying that. I love Paul George. I love watching him play. But
they were down 3-1. They were down 3-1. Paul George had 26 and 33 before the game 7. You talking about one game. Well, that same one game, your leader didn't show up. Kawhi Leonard didn't show up either.
I'm talking about. By the way, you're right, although Kawhi wasn't hitting the backboard from a corner 3. But you're right, Kawhi had a bad Game 7. There's so few bad performances from Kawhi throughout the years in the playoffs.
Go ahead, KP.
Paul George, there are many games, including in these last playoffs, where he didn't show up.
But
go ahead, KP.
Max, you keep talking about what's going on the court. A leader is more than just playing basketball, Max. Leadership is everything. The whole is making everybody feel comfortable, everybody feel whole. Being able to address situations when things are not going well for you, but things are going well for the team. That's a real leader. Kawhi Leonard is not pulling no one to the side. If Reggie Jackson is having is going through a shooting slump or having a bad 10 games, you think Kawhi Leonard is pulling Reggie Jackson to the side and having a conversation with him? Hell no. Paul George is. Max, that's a leader. It's only one way to paint a leader. It's not just show up and produce 25 and 9 and everybody else do what the hell y'all got to do. Just follow my lead far as my skill set, because everyone is not skilled like Kawhi, but a leader has to be vocal. Has to be vocal. If you ask anybody around the NBA,
but actually,
who's their leader in their locker room, what's their leader in the locker room? Just like in Golden State, Steph is not their leader. Draymond Green is their leader. He's the one that's doing all the talking. He's the vocal guy. He's the one that we hear all the time. Although Steph is the culture, he's the franchise, but he's not the leader. It's a difference.
What I would point out is teams where the leader is not the best player are in a tougher situation than teams where they are. By the way, Steph Curry is not the leader on the team. They were lucky to win one championship against the Cavs before KD showed up and created a power imbalance in the NBA where it was impossible for them to lose. Maybe that has something to do with it. But besides that, this is not a great choice. A dilemma is not just a tough choice. It's a choice between 2 bad options. These, if you want to paint Kawhi that way, and you may be right, he's incapable of doing it based on your experience, Perk, just showing up and leading by example. He has to be more vocal. It's not in him. Well, then Kawhi is not a good choice, but neither is Paul George. The question is, which leader can lead you to a title? That may be. That's why I think we all thought they should have gotten Rondo. They needed a guy like that. And maybe neither one of these guys are. If I had to choose between the two, give me the guy with 2 finals MVPs, not the guy with a reputation for going away in the playoffs.
Well, let's go to your guy, Max. Let's go to your guy, because this same Kawhi Leonard, you ain't never heard those complaints about LeBron. You ain't never heard those complaints about other leaders. You see guys complaining about him all the time. Well, privately, off the record and all of this other stuff. Why are they doing that? Because apparently, outside of his game, he's having a negative effect on the franchise, or at least he did last year.
Yeah, it could
but Max, you can't move the goal.
You could argue he had a negative effect, although he. Go ahead.
But Max,
you
cannot continue to move the goalpost to fit your narrative. You can't do that. You keep moving the goalpost. No,
I'm not moving
keep
anything.
it in one spot.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'll take the 2-time Finals MVP. You guys will take the guy who doesn't play in the playoffs. It's okay.
All right, cool. People moving the goalposts. I'm trying to move the conversation. Let's go here. The 4th best player.